Ladies, pause this video right now if your content being lied to, if you're okay with settling for less than you deserve, if you're fine with men walking all over you while you smile and call it love. But if you're ready for the brutal, unapologetic truth about why men take advantage of you and how to flip the script forever, keep watching. Because what I'm about to reveal will dismantle everything you've been taught about relationships. Every word of this will feel like a punch to the gut. And by the end, you'll either be furious or finally free. This isn't theory. This isn't maybe. This is the cold, hard reality of what men really think when you text first, when you chase, when you forgive the unforgivable just to keep him. You think you're being patient. He thinks you're desperate. You call it compromise. He calls it weakness. You believe you're building a future. He's counting down the days until you realize he's been taking you for granted. And the worst part, he knows you'll stay because you always do, but not anymore. Today that ends. In the next few minutes, I'm exposing the psychological traps you've been falling into, the ones society programmed you to accept as normal. The reason you attract users, not partners. The reason good guys turn cold. The reason you keep repeating the same cycle while feeling emptier every time. It's not bad luck. It's not karma. It's you. Unknowingly handing over your power to men who haven't earned it. Letting them set the rules of a game rigged against you, and trusting people who've shown you exactly who they are. By the time this video ends, you'll know exactly how to spot a man's weakness from the first conversation, how to dismantle his ego without saying a word, how to make him fear losing you more than he fears being alone. This isn't about revenge. This is about evolution. Becoming the woman who doesn't just walk away from disrespect, but makes damn sure he regrets ever disrespecting her. The clock's ticking. Your future self is watching. What happens next is up to you. Let's cut through the noise and get straight to what no one is brave enough to say out loud. A man's ego isn't just some fragile thing you have to tiptoe around. It's the ultimate leverage point, the hidden pressure point that determines whether he sees you as disposable or irreplaceable. This isn't about manipulation. This is about understanding the biological and psychological wiring that drives his every decision, his every action, and yes, his every weakness. Think about the men you've known, the ones who seemed unshakable, the ones who acted like they had it all together. Now think again. Behind every display of confidence, behind every boast, behind every flex of power, there's a silent, gnawing fear. The fear of being exposed as weak, the fear of not measuring up, the fear of losing respect. This is the Achilles heel of every man, whether he admits it or not. From the moment a boy is born, he is conditioned to prove himself. Society tells him that his worth is tied to his strength, his success, his ability to dominate. He learns early that vulnerability is dangerous, that showing doubt is a liability, that needing help is a sign of failure. By the time he's a man, this conditioning is so deeply ingrained that it controls him, even if he doesn't realize it. This is why men chase money, status, and power, not because they're inherently greedy, but because they're running from the terror of being seen as insignificant. This is why they compete, why they posture, why they'd rather die than admit they're wrong. It's not just pride, it's survival. And once you understand this, you hold the key to how he sees you. Here's the brutal truth. If you feed his ego without boundaries, he'll take you for granted. If you make him feel like a king without demanding equal energy in return, he'll treat you like a servant. But if you master the balance, if you give him admiration while holding unshakable standards, he'll do anything to keep you. The women who command real power in relationships aren't the ones who blindly worship their men. They're the ones who make him feel respected, but never let him forget that respect is a two-way street. They're the ones who acknowledge his strengths, but refuse to shrink in his shadow. They're the ones who understand that a man's ego is like fire. Controlled, it gives warmth. Unchecked, it burns everything down. So how do you use this knowledge without playing games? Simple. You never let his ego become more important than your self-respect. You never let his need for validation override your boundaries. You recognize that his deepest fear is weakness, and you position yourself as the woman who makes him feel strong, but never lets him mistake that strength for superiority. Because here's the final unshakable truth. A man who feels truly respected by a woman he admires will move mountains to keep her. But a man who thinks he's above you will treat you like an afterthought. The choice isn't his, it's yours. Let's shatter the biggest lie women have been sold, the idea that love is about devotion, about giving endlessly, about making yourself available whenever he snaps his fingers. Wake up. That's not how male psychology works. That's not how attraction survives long term. The cold, hard reality? A man's brain is wired to chase, to conquer, to pursue what feels just out of reach. Not because he's cruel, not because he's playing games, but because his primal instincts equate ease with disinterest. Think about nature. A lion doesn't value the gazelle that walks into its jaws. A hunter doesn't treasure the prey that surrenders without a fight. There's no dopamine, no thrill, no deep satisfaction in what requires no effort. And whether modern men admit it or not, that biological wiring still controls them on a fundamental level. The moment you become too available, too predictable, too accommodating, you erase the very tension that keeps him invested. This isn't about manipulation. This is about understanding the unspoken rules of engagement. When you cancel plans last minute because he texts, when you're always the first to double text, when you rearrange your entire schedule just to fit into his, you're silently communicating that you have nothing better going on. And nothing kills attraction faster than the scent of desperation. Whether you think you're being loving or not, the women who hold power in relationships understand this instinctively. They have lives so rich, so compelling, that a man has to step up just to be part of it. They don't wait by the phone. They're too busy building empires. They don't drop everything for a last-minute date. They have standards and schedules that command respect. They don't beg for attention. They exude the quiet confidence of someone who knows other options exist. This is why playing hard to get works, not as a cheap trick, but as a reflection of your true worth. When you pull back, when you focus on yourself, when you stop making him the center of your universe, that's when his instincts kick in. That's when he starts wondering. That's when he begins questioning your value. Because here's the brutal part. People don't value what's always there. They value what they might lose. But this goes deeper than just playing games. This is about rewiring your entire approach to love. It's about recognizing that the healthiest relationships aren't built on one person orbiting the other. They're built on two complete individuals choosing each other every day. It's about understanding that real love isn't about possession. It's about mutual pursuit. So ask yourself, when was the last time he had to work for your attention? When was the last time you said no to something that didn't meet your standards? When was the last time you made him wonder if you'd still be there tomorrow? That's not cruelty. That's the natural order of desire. That's how you separate the men who see you as a convenience from the men who see you as a prize. Because here's the ultimate truth they don't teach you. Love isn't about fairness. It's about human nature, and human nature always wants what it has to earn. The moment you internalize that, you'll never settle for less than you deserve again. Let's rip the Band-Aid off right now. The most dangerous lie women believe is that dependence equals love, that needing a man proves your devotion, that surrendering your power somehow makes you more desirable. Nothing could be further from the truth. The uncomfortable reality, a man's deepest fear isn't your strength, it's your helplessness. Not because he's cruel, but because biology and psychology have hardwired him to recoil from what feels like a burden. There's a primal switch that flips in the male brain when he senses total dependence. What begins as attraction slowly curdles into resentment. Why? Because you've unconsciously positioned yourself as a liability rather than an asset. You've triggered his deepest dread, the fear of being trapped by obligation rather than chosen by desire. The women who understand this don't play the damsel in distress. They become the warrior queen who allows him to be her ally, never her savior. This isn't speculation, it's evolutionary science. For thousands of years, men who partnered with competent, resourceful women survived and thrived. Those burdened with helpless partners struggled to pass on their genes. That survival instinct still lives in his DNA today. When you demonstrate complete self-sufficiency, financial, emotional, social, you're not pushing him away. You're speaking directly to his most ancient programming. This is a woman who improves my odds of survival. But here's where modern relationships go catastrophically wrong. Somewhere along the line, women started believing that making a man feel needed meant making themselves needy. That's not connection. That's coercion. The healthiest relationships exist in the tension between autonomy and togetherness. He should feel that you want him, not that you'd collapse without him. There's a world of difference between I enjoy your presence and I require your presence to function. Watch how men treat women they truly respect versus those they pity. The woman who has her own money, her own mission, her own unshakable sense of purpose commands a different kind of attention. She doesn't beg for scraps of affection. She selects partners who enhance an already complete life. This is why men will cross oceans for women who seem perfectly capable of building their own boats. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to replace. The irony? The more indispensable you make yourself through your independence, the more desperately he'll work to make himself indispensable to you. Not out of fear or manipulation, but because you've activated his deepest competitive instincts. You've become the ultimate prize. Someone whose continued presence in his life feels like an honor rather than an obligation. This explains why men will neglect the woman who waits by the phone while obsessing over the one who's too busy building her empire to notice his texts. It's not that men are emotionally stunted, though some certainly are. It's that they're biologically programmed to invest in what demonstrates high value. Your neediness doesn't make you more lovable, it makes you predictable. And nothing kills erotic tension faster than predictability. So, here's the million-dollar question. Does your life scare the men you date? Not in the sense of intimidation, but in the thrilling uncertainty of whether they're truly worthy of you. Can they look at your world and honestly say they're adding value rather than filling a void? That's the razor's edge between healthy attachment and emotional dependency. The seismic shift happens when you realize the women who are chosen forever aren't the ones who made themselves needed. They're the ones who made themselves wanted. There's a universe of difference. One comes from abundance, the other from lack. One inspires devotion, the other breeds resentment. One says, I enhance your life, the other whispers, I drain your resources. This is why the most powerful romantic strategy isn't learning how to keep a man, it's becoming the type of woman men fight to keep. Not through manipulation or mind games, but through the irresistible magnetism of a life so well lived that his presence becomes a privilege, not a necessity. That's when you'll finally understand. True power in love doesn't come from holding on tight. It comes from having the strength to let go and watching who fights to stay. Let me tell you something that will change how you handle men forever. Your screams, your tears, your dramatic outbursts, they mean nothing to him. Absolutely nothing. In fact, they feed his ego. Every time you explode, every time you beg, every time you emotionally vomit your pain onto him, you're giving him exactly what he wants. Proof that he still has power over you. But silence, complete, icy, unnerving silence, that's the kryptonite to his soul. That's what keeps him up at night in a cold sweat, wondering if he's about to lose you forever. Think about the last time a man truly wronged you, really hurt you. What did you do? You probably confronted him immediately, right? Laid out all your pain in vivid detail, showed him exactly how deeply he cut you, and what happened? Maybe he gave you a half-assed apology. Maybe he turned it around on you. Maybe he just stared blankly, waiting for the storm to pass so he could go back to whatever he was doing. Because here's the brutal truth. Men are conditioned to weather emotional outbursts. They've been dealing with women's tears since childhood. They know the script. They know eventually you'll run out of steam. But silence? That's a language they don't understand. That's a weapon they can't defend against. When you go completely silent, no explanations, no dramatic exits, no final words, you flip the entire power dynamic on its head. Suddenly, he's the one scrambling. Suddenly, he's the one filling the silence with his own fears and insecurities, because silence forces him to sit alone with the consequences of his actions in a way your screaming never could. This isn't just psychological warfare, it's evolutionary biology. For thousands of years, a woman's withdrawal signaled imminent danger to a man's survival. It meant the loss of intimacy, resources, and potentially his entire lineage. That primal terror still lives in his DNA today. When you emotionally disappear, you trigger something far deeper than guilt. You activate his survival instinct. That's why the silent treatment isn't just effective, it's devastating. But this isn't about playing games. This is about understanding that your words have been making him stronger while making you weaker. Every time you explain your pain, you're giving him a roadmap to manipulate you. Every time you articulate exactly what he did wrong, you're teaching him how little he can get away with next time. Every tear you shed in front of him is another drop of power leaking from your hands into his. The women who command real respect understand this instinctively. They don't waste energy on outbursts. They don't beg for decency. When crossed, they don't announce their departure, they simply vanish. And in that vacuum of silence, something miraculous happens. The man who took you for granted suddenly realizes exactly what he's about to lose. Not because you told him, but because you forced him to figure it out for himself. This is why walking away without a word is infinitely more powerful than any dramatic confrontation. When you argue, you're still engaging. When you cry, you're still connected. But when you go silent, you've severed the emotional lifeline he didn't even realize he was clinging to. You've forced him to experience the full weight of life without you. And that's a lesson no amount of your words could ever teach. So the next time he disrespects you, remember, your anger gives him power. Your silence takes it back. Your tears show him where to push. Your stillness shows him the door. Choose wisely. Because in the economy of love, silence isn't just golden, it's the currency of queens. Let's get one thing straight. When a man pushes your boundaries, ignores your needs, or forgets to text for days, it's not an accident, it's not a misunderstanding, it's a test. A calculated, primal, often subconscious experiment to answer one question: how much can I get away with? And here's what you're probably not ready to hear. Every time you let it slide, every time you make excuses, every time you swallow your anger to keep the peace, you're not being kind. You're signing a contract that says, here's how little respect you need to show me. Think about the last time a man crossed a line with you. Maybe he canceled plans last minute with a flimsy excuse. Maybe he joked about your weight. Maybe he left you on red for 3 days. What did you do? If you're like most women, you probably gave him a pass. You told yourself it's not that big of a deal. You rationalized he's just stressed. You swallowed your discomfort to avoid seeming dramatic. But here's the cold, hard truth. That moment wasn't a minor slip-up. It was a trial run. He was probing your defenses, testing your self-worth, scouting for weaknesses. And when you didn't push back, you lit a neon sign over your head that said, "I accept crumbs." This isn't paranoia, it's primal psychology. Men and all humans are hardwired to seek the path of least resistance. If he can get affection without effort, sex without sacrifice, loyalty without labor, why wouldn't he? Your boundaries aren't just rules. They're the price of admission to your life. The moment he realizes you'll lower that price, the value of your entire relationship plummets. But here's where most women self-sabotage. They think boundaries are about controlling his behavior. Wrong. Boundaries are about controlling yours. They're not about making him act right. They're about you refusing to stick around when he acts wrong. The man who shows up late, the one who forgets your birthday, the one who flirts with other women in front of you, they're not broken. They're observing. They're studying your reactions to determine exactly how much disrespect you'll tolerate. And every time you tolerate more, you rewrite the rules of what's acceptable. Let's be brutally honest. The reason so many women end up in relationships that drain their soul isn't because they picked bad men. It's because they trained good men to treat them badly. It's because they confused patience with permission, kindness with weakness, and love with self-betrayal. The man who ghosts you for weeks, then showers you with affection, isn't complicated. He's a conditioned opportunist, and you're the one who conditioned him. This is why the first offense matters more than you can imagine. That first canceled date, that first disrespectful joke, that first time he prioritizes his friends over you, that's your golden moment. That's your chance to set the tone for everything that follows. Because here's the secret toxic men don't want you to know. They don't start with giant violations. They start with tiny trespasses. They chip away at your boundaries millimeter by millimeter, so slowly you don't even notice the erosion until you're standing in rubble. The women who command real respect understand this. They don't wait for the third strike. They don't give chances. The first time a man shows them who he is, they believe him. They don't fall for potential, they respond to reality, and in doing so, they filter out the time wasters, the energy vampires, the emotional tourists, leaving only those truly worthy of their light. But this requires a spine of steel. It requires looking a man you're infatuated with dead in the eye and saying, "No, that doesn't work for me." It requires walking away from potential love when it comes packaged with disrespect. It means understanding that a man who truly values you won't need warnings or second chances. He'll be terrified of losing you from day one. The tragic irony, the more you tolerate, the less he desires you. The more you shrink to fit his comfort, the smaller you become in his eyes. The more you prioritize his feelings over your dignity, the more disposable you seem. Because here's the ugly truth about human nature. We don't cherish what we don't respect. And we can't respect what refuses to respect itself. So here's your wake-up call. Every time you let a man cross a line, you're not saving the relationship. You're killing it. You're transforming what could have been a passionate partnership into a parent-child dynamic where he's the naughty toddler and you're the exhausted babysitter. Is that the love story you want? To spend your life policing a grown man's decency? To beg for bare minimum treatment? To dim your light so his mediocrity feels bright enough? The alternative isn't loneliness, it's liberation. It's understanding that the right man isn't intimidated by your standards. He's inspired by them. It's realizing that when you stop tolerating disrespect, you don't lose men, you lose the wrong men. And in that loss, you create space for someone who'll look at your boundaries not as obstacles, but as instructions for how to love you well. This isn't about being harsh. It's about being honest. Honest with yourself about what you deserve. Honest with him about what you'll accept. Honest about the fact that love shouldn't feel like a battlefield where you're constantly defending your worth. So the next time a man tests you, remember, you're not being tested on how much you can endure. You're being tested on how much you truly love yourself. And that's an exam where anything less than an A+ is failing.